The audio exception analytic uses the camera's onboard microphone to detect sudden spikes or drops in noise levels. For detecting spikes, you can set a specific threshold, and the system will trigger an alert whenever the sound exceeds this level. For example, you can be alerted when a dog barks, glass breaks, or even when someone honks their horn in a traffic monitoring scenario. In environments with consistent background noise, like machinery or a factory conveyor belt, even a slight drop in noise levels can trigger an alert, helping you to detect potential issues and disruptions. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through everything you need to know about audio exceptions, from setting up the rule to seeing it in action. For this tutorial, I'll be using an 8 megapixel 8-channel NVR running firmware version 1.4.10, along with a 4 megapixel R-Sight camera with a built-in microphone running firmware version 5.2.3. Let's get started.
The first step is to ensure that the camera we want to use for audio exception analytics has the microphone enabled. To do this on the NVR, go to Settings, locate Events and Analytics, select Event Notifications, and then go to Audio. This is where the audio settings are configured. To enable the microphone on a camera, select Audio Device. A list of cameras with built-in microphones will appear. Choose the appropriate camera and enable the audio device by clicking the checkbox. Ensure that the built-in microphone is selected as the audio input device if using the onboard microphone, or select Line In if you're using an external microphone connected to the camera's audio input. Adjust the microphone sensitivity by modifying the input volume as needed. Once the audio is set up on the device, let's proceed with configuring the rule.
To set up audio exception rule on the NVR, start by pressing the menu button on the bottom left corner. Then select Settings. From there, navigate to Analytics and continue until you see the option to choose the analytic type. The audio exception analytic can be found under the Other category. After selecting Other, you'll see the analytic setup template. The first step is to choose the camera for which you want to create the audio exception rule. Once the camera is selected, click on Audio Exception to open up the parameter setting. Remember, the audio exception rule uses the camera's onboard microphone to detect abnormalities in sound levels. To set this up effectively, we first need a baseline or a reference graph of normal sound levels, which will help define the detection parameters. To generate this graph, simply click Enable and then hit Apply. The graph will now display real-time audio data as a visual representation. You'll see three distinct lines on the graph. Let me explain what each one represents. The red line represents sound intensity. It reacts to sudden spikes in sound levels, so it will only respond to loud, abrupt noises in your environment, like yelling, or gunshots, slamming doors, or collisions of objects, just to name a few. The blue line represents background sound intensity. It monitors continuous ambient noise in the environment, such as factory machinery, the hum of a fan, a server room, or the constant buzz of a refrigerator. The blue line reacts to any changes in these constant background sounds. The white line represents the sound intensity threshold, which you can customize. It is used solely to set a limit for triggering alerts when there are sudden increases in sound levels above this threshold. Note, this is only applicable to spikes in the red line or sound intensity. Now that you understand how the graph works, let's move on to setting your parameters, starting with the schedule. You can set a specific schedule for when you want the audio exception rule to be active. You have the option to either use one of the default schedules or create a custom schedule that fits your needs. Next, we have recognition duration. This parameter determines the alarm holding time. You can choose a duration anywhere between 1 second and 2 minutes, depending on how long you want the alert to stay active once triggered. Let's move on to setting the parameters for detecting sound increases and decreases. And we'll start with sudden increase. Just to reiterate, a trigger will only occur when the sound intensity represented by the red line on the graph suddenly spikes above the sound intensity threshold, represented by the white line. The system does not take the blue line into account when detecting sudden spikes in noise levels. Let's have a look at sensitivity. The sensitivity setting determines how responsive the microphone will be to sound levels. The higher the sensitivity is set, the less sensitive the microphone will be to changes in sound, meaning it will require a larger change in noise to trigger an event. You can use this setting to fine-tune your analytics, adjusting the microphone's responsiveness to better suit your environment. Next, we have the sound intensity threshold, which is set to 50 by default, as shown on the graph. You can adjust this threshold to better suit your environment and preferences, allowing for more customized detection of sound level spikes. For example, when you adjust this parameter and click apply, you'll see the level on the graph will change accordingly. Now let's look at sudden decreases in sound. And just to reiterate, this is only applicable to the blue line on the graph, which represents background sound intensity. Unlike the red line, there's no option to set a sound intensity threshold. The system will trigger an event as soon as the ambient or continuous noise in the environment decreases. You can also adjust the sensitivity related to the background sound, as explained earlier, to fine-tune how the system responds to changes in ambient noise levels. Okay, great. Now that you understand how the audio exception rule works, let's take a look at potential triggers for these events. Just like our other AI-based analytics, we offer a full range of triggers for you to choose from. You have general triggers available, such as snapshots, push notifications to the Cam2 app, NVR pop-ups, and email alerts. Additionally, you can record not only the camera where the event occurred, but also from any other camera connected to your system. When it comes to alarm outputs, you have flexibility as well. You can request the NVR alarm outputs to close, or select any available alarm output connected to your system to respond. This could be from any camera connected to your system that has an available alarm output. And lastly, you can set any of your PTZ cameras connected to the NVR to a pre-configured preset, allowing for automated camera positioning when an event is triggered. Now, let's go see it in action, starting with a sudden increase in sound. In this example, we're using our camera to monitor traffic. When a spike in sound exceeds the set threshold, the trigger I've configured will cause the camera feed to enlarge on the screen. To help us understand how this rule works, I've also superimposed the sound intensity graph. This will give you insight into how the system detects and responds to the spike in sound. Let's let the video play out. When you heard the first horn, the sound intensity spiked, but not enough to surpass the threshold. However, when you heard the second horn, the sound intensity exceeded the threshold, which triggered the event that we've set up. Now, let's have a closer look at a sudden decrease in sound. In this example, we have our camera set up in a factory monitoring machinery. As the machine begins to stop, you'll notice the blue line on the graph starts to drop. This decrease in background noise triggers the event we've set up. Let's let it play out. And with that, I will end this tutorial. Thank you very much for joining. Hope to see you all soon.